If you're like me, when I was starting my welding journey, you probably think that the welder is the tool that you're going to use the most. Unfortunately, that's not the case. There's a few other tools you're probably going to use more than your welder, and we're going to talk about the most used one today, and I'm going to give you some tips on what to look for when you're buying it. Alright, so the tool you're going to use the most is going to be your angle grinder. And the reason for that is just because they're so versatile. You can cut metal with them, you can prep metal with them, and you can grind your welds smooth when you're done. Especially when you're a beginner, some of those welds are probably going to be looking pretty ugly. Because it's the tool you're going to be using the most, it's important to set aside a portion of your budget towards buying a quality one. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and buy the most expensive grinder you can find. However, you do want to find something that's of reasonable quality, that's not going to burn up on you, and has the power needed for metalworking and fabricating. So as you can see here, I've got 3 different grinders. I have all 3 of them for different reasons. So first up, I have my cordless rigid grinder. I will say that if you're just starting out, I wouldn't buy a cordless grinder unless you're already in a cordless tool system and you have a lot of batteries for it. Grinders eat up batteries, and there's nothing worse than waiting for a battery to charge to try and finish your project. Another downside to the cordless grinders are just the size and the weight. These big batteries weigh a lot. The grinder's longer to accommodate the battery, so sometimes it can be more difficult to get in tight places. You're also going to be paying for the cordless feature of the grinder, and a corded grinder of the same quality and specs is going to probably be cheaper and easier on your budget. So now that we've established you probably want to look for a corded grinder as a first grinder, what you need to look for is the amperage that it's rated for. A grinder with a low amperage is going to get bogged down easy, and it's probably going to get really hot quickly. And some of these cheaper grinders even have plastic gears and stuff inside of them that can't stand up to constant use. So this is a Harbor Freight Drill Master grinder, and it's only rated at 4.2 amps. This thing gets super hot if you try grinding or cutting with it for any period of time. I keep a wire wheel on mine because it's handy to grab, and then that's not as intensive as grinding or cutting. This was on sale for 12 bucks. I grabbed one to have it around specifically for this purpose. And I view this as disposable. Once this goes out, I'm going to throw it away and get another one if I feel like I need another one. So this Metabo HPT I recently picked up. It's rated at 6.2 amps. And this has become my workhorse here in the garage. I've had no problems with it. And it really has a great price point. I think I paid $39.99 for this when I bought it. I checked and it's still priced at that, although regular price looks to be $49.99, and I still think it's a great value even at that price. So this is 6.2 amps, and just for a comparison, to get a DeWalt 7 amp grinder is $79.99, so it's over twice the price of this one. And you're not going to get twice the performance out of it. So the nice thing about the price point of this grinder is that you may be able to afford 2. And the reason you would want 2 is to save yourself time switching out your discs. If you've got to go back and forth between cutting and grinding or anything like that, you're going to spend a lot of time changing these discs out, and it can really slow you down. I'll leave a link to this in the description below if you want to check this one out. I honestly think that this is the best buy in grinders right now, especially for a beginner on a budget. There are a few other options out there. You have the Wen, has a 7.5 amp that's right around $30 right now. I personally haven't used the grinder, but I do have a couple other tools from them, and I've had no real issues with them. Bosch also has a 6 amp grinder that's about $56 to $60. I would go with Metabo over the Bosch, just based on price. I mean, they're about the same as far as performance goes. So the reason you're going to spend so much time with your angle grinder and using it the most is because, as you can see here, there's a lot of different things that can go on your grinder to cover a variety of tasks. If you're just starting out, cutting wheels can go a long ways to getting a lot of projects done. You don't need any fancy cutting equipment for your beginner basic projects. Even some advanced projects you can do just a cut-off wheel on a grinder. The next task you're going to be able to handle is prepping metal. So you got flap wheels, these are resin discs, and some Scotch-Brite discs and stuff. These are going to be able to take any rust or paint off any metal you may be using, clean it up, and get it ready to have a good solid weld put to it. Dirty metal is not going to weld as nice or as good as clean metal. But there are a variety of different ways to get clean metal based on whether you're using new metal, scrap metal. The one thing I kind of stopped using myself was just the regular grinding discs that you see that come with some grinders like this Metabo. It came with 5 of these grinding wheels. I don't use these anymore. I find that they like to chatter a lot on the work and they're loud. I'd much rather use a flat disc or something like this resin disc for grinding down metal. And another thing you can use on a grinder is a wire wheel. So this is a cup that does this, in effect does the same thing. These wire wheels are great for cleaning up your welds when you're done, getting any spatter or slag off of your work if you're using anything flux based, and it'll take some loose paint off and stuff like that as well. So your most intensive operations are going to be cutting, especially thick metal, and then your surface prep with your flap discs and grinding wheels and things like that. That's why you need to look for a decent quality grinder. I'm not saying, once again, that you have to buy some super expensive grinder. You just need to make sure that you're getting something that's quality and isn't going to burn out or bog down while you're in the middle of your project. And in a future video, we'll go through some of these different discs. I actually have the 3M Clash of the Grinders kit, which is what a couple of these are out of. So anyways, just be sure that you set aside part of your budget. Check out the links in the description below for the grinders we've talked about here. I do just want to say, I still use my grinder a ton, and I have both a bandsaw as well as a plasma cutter. And with both of those, you still may have to grind any burrs or edges off. The plasma cutter, sometimes you get slag on the back depending on what you're cutting. So you're still going to use them even if you get into those other more advanced options for cutting. So it's worth spending a little bit of money on a grinder up front. If you're looking for more, check out my video on flux core versus stick welding, and also check out the video on where to find cheap or free metal so you've got something to practice on.